Hello. Thank you all for coming. It's really an honor just to read in front of people, so thank you very much for coming out. Thank you to New England Review, whom I've revered for many, many years, and for the energetic and always surprising work that they have. Your father needs more time. This is fiction. This story is like 4 little parts. Each has a sort of a precious little title. The Jew. She said, "Have a seat," and went into the kitchen, a mirror image of my own down the hall, but then again, because she was 75, in no way a mirror image. The kitchen was, of course, nothing but a pen created by the breakfast bar, if that is what they are still called, if people are still willing to call them that. People here rely heavily on the breakfast bar, not for breakfasting or even for drinking it, but for how it holds the room together, holds everything together. Breakfast bar sums it up. The old Jew stood in there under the neon, twisting out ice. Her knuckled back was to me, and through the dyed frizz, her scalp shone. I could see the ball of her skull. "I'm going to give you lots of ice," she shouted. "I see how you go through it." "The usual ice is fine," I said. We hollered as though from different rooms. "You eat it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Okay. You macerate it. It makes no difference to me." "No difference to him," she said, coming around the breakfast bar like she knew everything. I had just dropped off my 2nd month's rent. It had been during my first week in the complex, giddy still with the new catastrophe of my life, that I developed the merry habit of knocking on her jamb when I passed her open door. Just a neighbor checking in, twirling my mail key until invited in for a drink, late enough so it wasn't conspicuous I hadn't been at work, but not so late as to be really good timing it. A prudent little cocktail hour we never ruptured. The window light gave way to lamplight, and I got buzzed on a mild immigrant mother fantasy, and she on some sort of low-frequency flirting, or it was the other way around, or it was both ways. I was to leave when her show came on. "You don't have a dog, do you?" She held out over the coffee table a trembling tumbler, thick as an ashtray at its base. Where it was tinted a pale blue from some ribbon in the glass the eye couldn't get at. The pebbly wrist was just managing, and as I half stood to relieve her of the heavy tumbler, cupping a hand beneath to catch the icy slosh, she teetered backwards, her black eyes holding on to me as if for balance, or just awaiting an answer. "A dog?" Before I could respond, she shook her head and walked back to her chair. "Everybody here has dogs." I nodded, and instead of talking, tugged back the knees of my slacks and rested the drink in my crotch. It was what I always did, my little sham of down-on-heels gentility, like a country judge who had been disbarred or debenched, whatever, then bewildered out here for some somber penance. This sham carried in it somehow the sham of the patient son, the autumnal lover. "Harold and I always had dogs," she said. "I've had 50 dogs. There was a Scotty named Early Chester that sailed out to North Haven with us each summer. For weeks it ran rats out of the scrub brush and dashed down to the rocks and back barking. I don't think you were supposed to let those kinds of dogs run loose. Something killed it." "Oh, Harold, was it?" We were advancing now. We sipped our bourbon and ginger ales. "I don't have a dog," I said. "I know that. I suppose I meant at your real house." "Just over Buster Boyd Bridge with South Carolina, and the house, and the woman, and the boy." I shook my head. "There is no dog there either." "Well, don't get one now." We drank to that. I picked up a little mahogany rhinoceros, tuskless. This woman had built around herself a crypt of such trinkage, things of tortoise and jade, china and brass, lacquered Japanese things. Crap. Whether she had yachted in Europe or lived in northern dumpsters, it hardly mattered. She clearly wasn't from Gastonia. I hoped it was clear I wasn't from Gastonia. I replaced the rhinoceros on the chattering glass table. "I am having company," I announced. She was doubled over, fumbling under the recliner for the remote. Well, it's good you should, she said, subtle as a queen, no way ever to decipher the inflection, whether it bespoke delicately dismissive patrician authority I had originally suspected, and that last month made me feel I'd joined some colony of reposing expats here, or was just more of the practiced gibberish that had begun to recur over the weeks, like the silken blouse with its soiled cuffs, revealing beneath its frayed veneer something crepuscular and empty, that I was just coming to suspect more and more lately, and that, upon suspecting, made me feel at times that I was sitting alone in a room with a dressed-up cockroach. The show she watched every night was Hee Haw. I think it probably is good, I said to myself. Company, she said. Her sandaled foot had begun to stir and erect itself and bounce as it did before the show came on. She had found the remote and was holding it in her lap. A palsied thumb caressed the red button. I chewed the rest of my ice to snow. I raised the tumbler and turned it in the light. What would you call this? She looked through the murk at me, blinking. The black little eyes pebbles at the bottom of time. In Jerusalem, I think. I mean this color, this blue. Dead Sea. The village. Outside, the walkway rumbled with bass. As I neared Dale's open door, the walkway's aluminum railing rang with each concussion. My feet vibrated, my fillings. Mr. Hawthorne, I said, lingering in the doorway, bass bouncing into me like big rubber wrecking balls. I had smelled the pot from the Jews. He danced up from the couch, bandy and baggy jeans, and turned down the stereo. Here was one of our obsequious southern drug dealers, mantis-faced, with eyes of the clearest white, the thinnest blue, piercing and empty. What up, Cleve? My name sounded bright and simple in his mouth, like I were made of Nerf. He delivered a swooping handshake. Is this the party? I craned in and gaped around his apartment, a bungling father crashing a kegger. It was my line. Yeah, dog, word, yo, Cleve, I need you to do something for me. Hey, you got it, bud. He borrowed a drill gun from me last week and returned it the same day, charged. Around here, we borrow something, we bring it back same day, he declared in his simple pride. I was starting to like my little village. Shoot, I said. Well, the spot they gave you out there in the lot, I need you to use it. Oh, did I take your place again? I shook my head. Hell, I guess I got a lot on my mind lately, a lot on my mind. He lifted his chin and smiled as though I were standing about 10 feet back. It's just, I had to park up at the third phase, then walk back down. Third phase. The third phase was a quarter mile off. Jesus. I pictured a tiny little figure in the distance, working his way down the steep berms that separated each phase. Tiny little baggy jeans. I shrugged. I guess someone was in my spot. Yeah, that's what the condo association's for, Cleve. That happens. You call them. He made a little thumb and pinky phone next to his head. Well, now I feel like an ass, I said, glaring hard so he'd feel like an ass. Condo association, how about a joint, man? It's okay, Cleve. But you've been here over a month now, and I won't mention it again. It's only I had to park up at the third phase, then walk back down. Loud and clear. Anyway, I smiled. I'm expecting company. Cool, just, keep it straight out there. He didn't quite laugh. We good? I stepped out into the hallway and squinted off toward my own door as though contemplating fairway yardage. Certainly I wasn't going to apologize to this kid standing before me bare-nippled with the milky tan of a teenager. Yet you got it, I said and walked off. His door eased shut behind me and the bolt shot a little hard, and then the throbbing bass and a little voice inside. That's right, we good, Jack. The arborist. It was already dusk as I approached my own door. With a little inner shiver, I saw my neighbor's door gaping open, which was rare. I had seen him exactly twice since I had moved in. He was in his 40s and wanted to be left alone. Once in a while, I heard the low murmur of a TV. He cleared his throat in his sleep. I passed the doorway quickly, slipping a glance from the side of my eye. The apartment was dark, but for the dull light of the sliding patio door in the back, open, a thin white curtain lifting into the room. The breeze wafted through the apartment and out the doorway, stirring my hair. A silhouette rounded the couch toward the patio door, a shirtless, bulky torso. The neck of an enrolled bottle glowed at his side. The curtain filled and rose and spun like a bell to receive him. Company. A condo in Gastonia is no place to receive your son for the weekend after forgetting his birthday the weekend before. I had prepared a gracious speech, but just in the door he wiped off his mother's kiss with this yearning, "Jesus!" And I saw I couldn't give an inch. "Your mother says you've been hollering at her." "She's a hypochondriac." "Well, go easy. What's wrong with her shorts?" Beneath the aqua corduroy shorts hung a good 2 inches of plaid boxer. He made a show of sparing me the withering pits of his eyes. "Dad, this is how Mac McBride and I wear them." "I see. Well, I'm a little out of the loop lately. Grab a Coke." I went back to my bedroom and returned wearing yellow swim trunks over a pair of plaid Bermudas. My son was kneeled in the den, setting a CD carefully into the tray of a nasty little NAD stereo system I had, in which, along with the 15-inch Sherwin Vegas hulking in the corners, I'd soon pawn for alimony. He barely glanced up, but there was a satisfying face drain. Jesus, what a gooner. Only 10 and all these Jesuses. "What are you putting on?" He frisbeed the jewel case at my chest, so I had to fumble at it like a fogey. "Gigantogrit," I said, turning the thing over. What is a gigantogrit? But he'd sunk into the couch, his head already stooped with a cool and personal list, like he might just about fire up a joint. And I saw the connoisseur had a lesson for me, and I should assume a listening attitude. Basically, shut up. I hung an elbow off the entertainment cabinet and tipped my head and let my eyes coolly disconnect, aping him as he apes someone whose company is at a premium. "Mac McBride give you this?" "Shh!" And in tumbled a tenor drum with some nuts loose, followed by a creaky upright bass, both bungling along like two autistic hobos and occasionally overlaid by toneless slabs of distortion, maybe 2 chords in all. The reluctant singer, cartoonishly parched, came legging in and out of this junkyard noise with goofy hinged quatrains, singing much as I imagine a tarantula might. At the bright sound of my half-sixer tugged across the grating, my son glared into the kitchen. "Jesus, what are you doing? Just chill out for once." I shot up my arms, a man condemned to eggshells, and strolled back around the breakfast bar to my listening post by the cabinet, suckling down half a can on the way. "Well, hell, if you're going to play it, play it." I flicked the volume and the Vegas sawed us in half. He jerked fetal and clamped his skull and seemed to be saying Jesus again. I held to the entertainment cabinet with one arm, nodding placidly to each car bomb concussion and trying very hard to keep it together. I then exhibited a loose, druggy jog, rolling my head back and closing my eyes and saying, "Yeah, man, yeah." He went for the stereo, but I hipped his skinny ass aside. He went for it again, and I bumped him again, and then he bumped me, and our bumping became the dancing. Or at least for the brief minute we thought we were in a movie about ourselves, and before we each got a good image burn of what the other looked like, which no moviegoer wants to see, and which bucked us from the thrall into a private, distracted shambling, like 2 boys shambling around the bed of some kind of scary group sex, each trying not to look like the other is looking for his clothes. I can't describe the noise. Imagine 4-inch hex bolts jammed into each ear and crackling with voltage and a lot of bright and brutal damage. Stroboscopic flaming tints exploding into your eyeballs. I had neighbors, dozens of them, to say nothing of the arborist, who I somehow knew was just sitting over there in the dark and taking it, suffering the noise as just another of the periodic cave-ins of the ditch he dug himself. The rest were already pounding at my door probably, my indignant Jewess, Dale at the fore, shirtless and deputized. Another bad apple in 1032. I didn't care. I was a little silly with having my son to myself tonight. It hadn't been a hot year at school. He was displaying. He was thin. He swung the fat volume knob back and forth as fast as he could to simulate an embolism. Don't do that. You'll blow the... But he was off, frogging around the room. He stood before a speaker, ramming his groin at it. An innocent spaz out, or not innocent. No coke, she told me. Not under any circumstances. Not even on the premises. Don't do that, I hollered, and my son spun and leered at me from his toxic adolescence. I was leaning on the back of the couch, breathing and withstanding the noise, boiling blood against my face and kicking my heart out of sync. I shook my head. We were doing permanent damage, and we were doing it in 4 pairs of shorts. When's the next song? I yelled. He was on his back now, dragging himself in slow circles with his legs, boring into the carpet. There isn't any next song. It's just the one. It goes the whole way. Epic. It's desert rock. It sure is. It was Neptune to me, and he didn't much get it either. But we bobbed our heads and bit our bottom lips and let our eyes coolly disconnect. Gooners out of the loop, or something worse. Something blinded and banished and searching for the correction. While 30 miles away, Mac McBride sat in his $500,000 bedroom, never guessing what motley ghouls danced around his name out here in the desert. Thank you.